A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us this Monday on the Evening Review. My name is Dewan Jabala, your host for tonight. We are tonight on the platform joined by Sinvula Mudabeti. He is an activist, perhaps a social justice activist. And today, again, there has been some public remarks that he's made, and the State House has responded to those. And we just wanted to engage him on those remarks. Thank you, Il, for always making time when we invite you here. In your latest public pronouncement, you criticized the pronouncement by President Mbumba, who basically said, because of drought, people in the northern parts of the country may get a bit of leniency when importing mahangu and the related foodstuff from Angola. And you are arguing that this amnesty seems to be only designed and confined to that part of the country, which you find discriminatory. If you can expand on what you meant.
Yeah, no, thank you, Toivo. I think what I meant, first of all, is that the drought is affecting the whole of Namibia.
Yeah.
And there are regions like the Zambezi region, the Kavango region, Kunene region, and northern regions that share borders with countries like Angola, Botswana, and Zambia. And so when the president made the public pronouncement urging law enforcement officers to be lenient, for me, my worry was, why is it not applicable to every part of this country? I mean, for a very long time, the Zambezi region residents would have bought maize meal at a cheaper price from Zambia, sweet potatoes, but we have very serious restrictions there. And so we were urging the president that he needs to do a national assessment for the whole country. And secondly, these pronouncements, should run through processes that this country has. There is a Minister of Safety and Security, there's a Minister of Finance, NAMRA is involved. So when a pronouncement is made by a president, the next day you have people importing mahangu, and then what mandate will the police have, in implementing such leniency? So my open letter to the president was to request him to say, let every Namibian who's affected benefit, and it should be done through the processes. If it's not done through these processes, then what you'll have is that one section of the country would be benefiting, while the rest of the country will not be benefiting. Yes.
Give me a sense, Sinvula, of the movement of goods between Namibia and Zambia in Zambezi, because around Katima Mulilo and perhaps other areas, because in the north where I come from, we literally have relatives living on the other side of the fence, and we graze. Sometimes you drive your animal on the other side of Angola for better grazing that day, and then you drive back your animals at sunset and stuff like that. Like a really communal border there. How does the situation look like there?
Yeah, you see, we have relatives in Zambia, in Botswana, because you know that these artificial boundaries that were put up by colonial masters did not consider, the ethnic groups that lived in those areas. So we are related to them, similar to what happens in the north. The difference, however, is that whereas in the north you are allowed to graze, for such kilos as permitted by standing agreements between Namibia and Angola, we don't have that agreement in the Zambezi. Whereas in the north, these kinship relations are actually regulated by government structures. MOUs are signed, and from time to time you hear public pronouncements that show that the relationship between Namibians living in the north and Angola are one. But you hardly hear that in the Zambezi. And for me, why it is a bone of contention, Zambia went out of its way to help Namibia get liberated, similar to what Angola did. But if you go to Kongola, a police checkpoint, which I called ruthless in the article, it has become a de facto veterinary line. That even mangoes that you have from the Zambezi region are confiscated every year. Even sour milk that does not carry foot and mouth disease that passes at Oshivelo is confiscated. So I think the relationship that we have should be regulated by government. Government needs to open these channels in the Zambezi region in a similar fashion in which they've opened the channels with Angola. Of course, with Botswana, it's a different issue. But in terms of prices of maize meal, for a very long time, Zambia has produced bumper harvests. And the price of maize meal was very cheap and affordable. But we don't see a government coming to our aid and saying, look, these people would have fared very well in terms of food production had they be, this type of traffic allowed. So that's what we are calling for.
You made that aspect of the mangoes and the sour milk. You cited those examples in your open letter, and I thought that was a huge contrast, really. Because if I'm coming from Okalongo home to Windhoek, the only thing that I shouldn't carry really is meat, which I find draconian also, especially if I'm just bringing meat for my children to eat in Windhoek. But that is the law. But I've never seen any other restrictions. If, of course, mangoes in Zambezi are produced on a much higher scale. But we do have also isolated plantations of those in our homesteads in the north, and there's never been any restrictions. Milk, I've never heard of anyone's milk being thrown away.
And you see, that's the painful part, that 3 years ago, we saw the Ministry of Agriculture informing northerners that sour milk should be passing through Oshivelo, and we were shocked. I called them and said, we thought sour milk carries foot and mouth disease. They said, no, it doesn't. And so we literally had to write on social media informing our people that, please, residents of the Zambezi region, you are allowed to carry your sour milk. If anyone molests you, inform us. And people were shocked. People were calling and saying, is this true? Because thousands of liters, my brother, sour milk was confiscated at Muruwan, thrown away. Not even for commercial use, for consumption. And so even the mango issues, we have, I think, the largest production of mangoes in the whole country. But I came in January with 250 kgs, and the police officer asks me, where did you get this? And I said to him, how is that your business? Should I take a police officer to my house and show him? And I think for us, this is why we are saying it's an issue of inequality. It's an issue of government perpetuating structural poverty against residents of the Zambezi region. Do you know that when you come from the north, in public transport or private transport, they don't stop you at Oshivelo to come out and produce your ID. But at Kongola, all cars that pass Kongola, people are subjected to produce their national identity documents to prove they are Namibian. And the argument has been, Zambezi region borders with foreign countries, but that's a lousy argument. Kavango has a border with Angola, the Kunene. So for me, when you see these measures perpetuated against your people, it is very clear that there is selective morality. And we are going to continue speaking against these vices. It is unfortunate that Hengari is insensitive. He does not know what happens on the ground and responds for the sake of securing his job.
And that is what I wanted to address you on, because Dr. Hengari, of course, the presidential spokesperson, replied to your letter. And he said some really, I don't know, my own assessment is terrible things. He said, for example, he's accusing you of tribalism.
Yes.
Saying that the president has a history of inclusive leadership and whatever. But you were raising a specific point.
Yeah.
You were not questioning his liberation credentials or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
But Dr. Hengari says you're a tribalist. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think Hengari is insensitive to the cries of Namibians. Yeah. 2020 November, when the Namibian Lives Matter movement was formed, and we informed State House that we were going to hold public demonstrations in the whole country to register our displeasure on how government was handling the acts of aggression by BDF. The same Hengari called us pointless. And here he is again. We are raising an issue of national importance and saying, Mr. President, we are also your children. And Hengari says, I'm a tribalist. So I think there is need that Hengari and others in this country need to be educated on how processes of this country work. And we are waiting for the president. If he does not assist residents of the Zambezi to access food from Zambia, I think Namibians have the democratic right to register their displeasure in other means that can respond to the president. And I think Hengari is also seeking relevance with the new president. He did that with the previous president. Today, as we speak, the Namibian Defense Force are deployed along the borders because of the public demonstrations that we So we are not going to stop because of what Hengari has said. He's doing it to respond to his job. But also I think he's intellectually lazy. He should have applied his mind to the issue. The issue is, please allow others in the country to access food from neighboring countries. The same way you've allowed northerners. That was our point.
So before you go for a break, essentially what you are saying, because you see what I found also strange a little bit about the pronouncement of President Bumba around allowing food importation in Namibia on a lenient basis is that, it was just, I generally have a problem with, I think it's a very good statement, but it was just randomly made. It was not a prepared speech. It's not something that you could tell it's not something that was prepared in advance to go and say. I think he was just responding to a concern there. And then it, of course, at that level, the pronouncement of the president usually becomes sort of public policy. And we saw the Minister of Agriculture quickly announcing some measures immediately, meaning that the whole thing has been formalized, but only confined to the regions concerned, because of course people in those regions raised their concern as a community. They couldn't have spoken for other regions, perhaps. They looked at themselves first. But once that becomes public policy, then you thought it should have then spread to the rest of the country. How is the drought situation in your region?
Man, the drought situation in Zambezi is worse, to be honest with you. I don't want to compare Zambezi to the north, but you see, the staple food in the Zambezi is maize. And in the north, it's mahangu. Now, maize is not as drought resistant as mahangu. So the effects of El Nino in the Zambezi region are worse on the maize production. So what that means is that the level at which people get affected in accessing this basic commodity is higher than in the north and every part of the country. And so my understanding is that what should determine government's response to the drought is level in terms of how severe it is in the part of the... So it is severe in the region. And not just that, you see, grazing is also another big issue. Unlike other parts of Namibia that have markets, we don't have a market to sell our cattle. And so the conditions are very dear. Of course, we appreciate the fact that government declared a state of emergency. But that doesn't take away the fact that there are better ways and means in which people can still survive outside what government gives to them. Yes.
Absolutely. We go for a very brief break and then I'll return with Sinvula Mudabeti.
The Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, in collaboration with the Namibia Tourism Board and the Ondonga Traditional Authority, will be hosting the Itotha Carnival at the Kangonde Salt Pan in the Oshikoto region from 27 June to 1st July 2024. Expect a fun-filled weekend including traditional dishes, cookout competitions, totem parades, traditional games, horse riding, skydiving and quad biking. Accommodation facilities will be available at cost. The Itotha Carnival, celebrating our ancient heritage.
Our conversation with Sinvula Mudabeti continues. Now, moving away from the subject at hand, I think we have pretty exhausted it now. Do you think also as an academic, that is also part of who you are, that the people in your region are also starting to see some of the things that you've mentioned? Because I look at the election results from 2019 and 2020, where even independent candidates have won constituencies, beating ruling party candidates and whatnot. Do you think that could be also in part a culmination of how the residents feel they are treated by the central government?
Yeah, it could be. Of course, a number of factors will, filter in as to why people decide to vote. But one thing is clear, that when the government of the day does not respond to the needs of the people, especially in one part of the country, then people start to register their displeasure through the ballot. And I think it is one thing that government should take very serious, that when people raise their concerns, public concerns of safety, of food, that they should be listened to firstly. And secondly, that we should not be responding for the sake of showing that we've responded. I think beyond writing articles, the people are hungry, they need food, and they have managed to sustain, their families. And all they need is government support. So the voting patterns will continue changing, because the generation is starting to see that beyond the liberation credentials, it's important we recognize that our forefathers were the second largest tribe in exile. It's not an ethnic issue. It is a numeric statement I'm making. They were the second largest tribe in terms of those who died in exile. And so they fought to have us, their children, benefit from the fruits of independence. And when the fruit is not trickling down to us, and you can see a particular pattern, so that makes voters change their preferences.
Yeah. Do you think that this constant flirtation with the idea of an independent Caprivi? As a matter of fact, we saw a poll that was held recently, people wanting back their Caprivi name instead of Zambezi. But that is a separate issue. The key issue here is these constant voices of dissent. People saying, we are not Namibians, we are Caprivians, we need a referendum. Of course, following also the unfortunate events of the late 90s. Do you think that that can also affect how a people can be perceived by a government that is in a situation like that?
Yeah, I think, in the area of politics, in the ruling party, for example, they have been enemies. People have been called enemies, from exile. The likes of Edipo Hamtenya left, RDP, COD. But you don't see the state perpetuating revenge against these people who came out of the ruling party. But when it comes to the Zambezi region, you see that happening. Yeah, so I think it's a necklace that people have put on us, that every time you want to stand up and speak, then they give you a name.
Yeah.
But how long will that be? We, our parents, fought for the liberation of this country. We are Namibians. And when we speak out and say, look, this Namibian house you are building, why are you excluding us? Then you are called names. So literally, I think it's government that is perpetuating that agenda, not us. We stand as Namibians who are in the Zambezi region. By the way, even the call of saying there were people who want the region to be called Caprivi, I was part of that deliberation. There were very few people. There were very few people who were calling for that. But it made headlines.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the problem with government now is that the whip they've been using, that every time we stand up and speak, they put you the necklace of, no, here they come, they want to be a country, is no more working. And that is why we are saying it will not work. That issue will not work. We are part of this country. We have contributed to the liberation of this country. And we are bona fide Namibians. We reserve the right to be heard. We reserve the right also to participate in the national heritage of this country. Yeah.
Do you, of course, you are also leading the Zambezi, the Zambezi Lives Matter, Matter movement, which was at the forefront of seeking answers when the Nshindo brothers were killed, I think 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
And that also did not paint a very glossy picture of you in the eyes of the authorities. That's why you were referring to how you were called, that you were, what was it?
Pointless.
It was a pointless whole thing. No, 4 people died, brutally killed in the manner that they were. So the movement itself, is it still existing?
Yeah, the movement is well and kicking.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to inform you and the Namibian nation that our genuine calls were heard by Parliament. In fact, Parliament adopted a report last year with the recommendations that we made. Chief among is that we wanted government to open a consulate office in Kasane. And Parliament agreed to that. And so we are in the process of going to the president that he activates that implementation, because the legislative arm of our government has oversight functions over the executive. So I'm happy that our calls were genuine calls for protection. We have had soldiers deployed. We've not had any other killing after that of Botswana Defence Force. So I think I'm happy and pleased to note that we use the democratic processes to register our displeasure, and government has finally heard. What is only remaining is the border treaty of 2018, because Namibia has not yet deposited the instruments of that treaty. So we are asking government to come out clearly and say, are they going to deposit? And if they deposit against the wishes of the 4 traditional authorities in the Zambezi region, who are the custodians of land rights, communal land rights, then it means government has disregarded the wishes and the will of the people. Unless they produce minutes that will show us, because the traditional authorities have said, can you show us the minutes of meetings where you consulted us and we gave consent to our ancestral land? Yes.
Is the movement going to, especially in 2024, a very important year, are you going to remain a pressure group? Are you considering entering the political terrain?
I think for now we will remain a social justice movement. We will continue calling on the rights of Namibians who reside in the Zambezi region, particularly along the Namibia-Botswana border. But if time comes that our concerns are not being listened to through the method that we are using, I think the membership and leadership will need to meet and discuss the way forward. But for now, we shall continue agitating for the rights of Namibians who reside in that part of the country.
Yes. Maybe in closing, Sinvula, we have elections coming up. All political leaders that are vying for president in particular are putting out their ideas. I'm just wondering if you were speaking to the Netumandaitas, the Tulas of this world, right now, and saying, look, because there seem to be genuine concerns in Zambezi, things that you can't just, are not very general to the country. There are specific Zambezi issues that that ought to be. You just spoke about the 2018 border treaty, which has angered a lot of people in the region, saying a lot of land, a lot of jurisdictions have been sort of handed over to Botswana. Namibians living in some villages are now being told that you are now on the other side. If you are speaking to those candidates, what would you say to them today?
Yeah, I think first of all, they need to address these concerns because they are genuine. You know, the Zambezi region, like we would always say, the former Caprivi Strip, when it was, formed, had international implications, you know. So when you keep cutting away land from the Zambezi region, you give it to Botswana, you give it to Kavango region, you are destabilizing the region. So I think there is need that whatever political formation is vying for presidency, they should come up with a program that shows that what are they going to do for that region that spells economic growth, inclusivity, and integration. We need to be integrated. In the Zambezi region, it is the only region in the country where you even struggle to buy a gun. You want to buy a firearm, shotgun, they ask you to produce a card to show you have cattle. Yet we have the lowest rate of using our firearms on human beings. So we need to hear from them. What are they going to do to avoid this inequality that has been perpetuated for long? And finally, also, I think to recognize that our concerns are not just genuine, they are concerns that build the nation, and when they are considered, I think Namibia would be a better place. But if the rhetoric continues of just saying, when we ask for a voice and people do not hear our voice, I think these issues will continue. And one day, I think the young people might decide to do whatever they do to register their displeasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sinvula, for coming through again.
Thank you, Toivo.
So it's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
That is Sinvula Mudabeti. He is a social justice activist who speaks mostly on concerns, on issues that are of concern to the Zambezi region. Of course, I'm not confining you now to Zambezi only, but of course, you've been very vocal on some of those issues in the region. Thank you for watching.